telling us how you, among these wanderings, in the midst of them, you wandered into a temple that was beginning 90 days Kyolche and proceeded to do it just right off the street. Yes, I'll never forget that. So thank you. Does anyone have a question?
I have a question, Stan, following up a little on this talk. What's the role of this sort of curiosity? I think that was implicit in Ali's story, and also the sense of that it's fun was kind of struck me. I was wondering if you could follow up on that a bit.
That's one. Yeah, this is an open mind. So you can call it curiosity, but I think the main characteristic of curiosity is that your mind is wide open. You haven't foreclosed on anything. You completely have don't know. So if you have don't know, then everything is new all the time. So we could think of curiosity as an open, don't know mind, completely open, you know, to this world. Then that can become a habit, actually. And curiosity, you know, is a kind of seeking, actually. So what is this? So it's also related to a great question. What is this? What am I? So I think this curiosity can actually be understood, and certainly in some sense, as fundamental to Zen practice. So a don't know mind is an open mind, a mind that doesn't pretend to have all the answers. I know in our schooling, I'm kind of encouraged to make believe, demonstrate, act as if, you know, we have all the answers. So ask me any question, you know, and I'll tell you what's what. You know, so teachers have to be especially careful about that. You know, so all of you, you know, are capable of asking me questions that I really shouldn't pretend to have any answer to. But I have to open my mouth anyway. So keeping that open, curious mind at all times, whether you're asked to deliver an opinion or to teaching, I think is a really important, fundamental characteristic. A mind that is clear like space. And Sun Tzu always used to use that, mind that is clear like space. And he would go on to say, clear like space is clear like a mirror. Red comes red, white comes white. Someone is hungry, give them food. Someone is thirsty, give them drink. So if someone appears and you're not the least bit curious about what this person might need, you won't be of much help to that person. Suppose you could also think of it as an inquiring mind. That's the same thing as what is this, moment to moment. So those are my expansions upon the notion of curiosity. And now I'm curious, does anyone else have a question? I see all these inquisitive minds. I know they're so inquisitive, but no, I guess no questions there yet. Yes, Felix?
My question would be how I can study where the university makes me or forces me to conceptualize things. Does that university education conceptualization as then in contrast with clear mind, or?
Yeah, Are you
How's that look?
Okay, go ahead. Are you at a university now? Are you a student or a professor?
I'm a student.
Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, so professors too have this problem as well as students. I think the way you put it is you're forced to conceptualize. So, it's all right to conceptualize as long as you don't become attached to your conceptions. So to conceptualize, this concept means to take together. Con is together, and the cept is from the Latin word that means to take hold of. So the very act of conceptualization, the word itself implies a kind of holding on to. Uh, that's what a concept is. So although we have to have concepts, and not only in the university, if your mind is wide, as I was saying before, and maybe that's what prompted your question, then the concept can be, say, here, and your mind is like this. So it doesn't take over. It doesn't control you. You don't have to be attached to it. You can use it as a tool rather than as an ideology that you must adhere to because maybe you thought of it. Sometimes, again, in the university, you do see people become rather attached to their thoughts and their thinking. And that's part of academic training. You have to write and defend a thesis. Yeah, I think it's okay to write it. I don't know about the defending it so much, if that's so good, but it's what you have to do as an academic, whether you're a student writing an essay on exam or a professor, writing a paper. I pretty much dodged that my whole academic career. I became a full professor and so forth, but all of my professional work had to do with translation, creative translation. I'm trying to think if I ever actually wrote a paper. I must have at some point. I don't know. Certainly wasn't very important to me, and it's not what I mostly did. So I was very fortunate in just trying to attain other people's minds. That is, the author whom I would be translating. And some of these minds were quite wonderful. Homer's mind was clear like space. And the other authors that I translated, all of them maybe to a degree lesser than Homer, had these wide open minds. So maybe you have to ask some other former professor about conceptualization. Maybe you would get a different answer, maybe one that would defend concepts more. After all, certain conceptions are fundamental, say, to our political system, which, maybe not the best, but if it worked the way it's supposed to, it wouldn't be too bad anyway. But it's something that I've been able, at least in my professional work, I won't claim, to be free of all concepts and opinions otherwise. I was simply reflecting another mind, trying to recreate another mind and another voice from, an ancient language into a modern poetic idiom. So that's a kind of creativity. And I think you can juxtapose or perhaps contrast conceptual thinking to creativity. So which one do you like? So thank you for your question. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, oops, somebody else. Jacob, you can go ahead.
Okay. So I've heard that saying a lot, the which one do you like saying, and I don't really understand it at all. Could you maybe explain it a bit, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so if you have likes and dislikes, you have a problem. So which one do you like could be expressed as which one do you dislike? Would you prefer that, Jacob? Which one do you dislike?
I don't know. I both, if either one is equally as confusing.
Right, I agree. It's more of a challenge. Usually, I mean, this can come up, especially in Kongan interviews, to see if you are holding on to something attached to anything. So usually you're presented with opposites. So this and that. And and they are in opposition to each other. And you're asked, which one do you like? That's actually an invitation to cut through this opposites thinking, which again you might call conceptual thinking. So it's a challenge for you to present a mind that is open, clear like space, not attached to this or that in the sense of opposites. So I'm sure this, well, maybe this hasn't come up, this phrase, which one do you like? So I actually, for instance, it did, without mentioning any names, and I'll come up in some interviews this morning. So it is a phrase that we use, and it's a challenge to put down, holding on to any opinion. So when you're asked, which one do you like? Please, step back and take a good look and see, what is real, what is actually before you, rather than thinking this or that. Just cut through, only go straight. So thank you for your question.
Yeah, so I have a question. So we hear red comes red like the mirror, white comes white.
Mhm.
If you see someone who is hungry, you give him food. If someone is thirsty, you give them drink, which is fairly straightforward and simple. But what if you have a mirror and a mob comes? Is it just mob? Or how do you not respond in a way that is emotional?
Yeah.
Or liking or disliking? I mean, I find that difficult because part of the mob problem is they were attached. They're attached to some conceptions, but that seems more complicated to me. How do you?
Yes. So sometimes as you're saying, you're presented with chaos. Then the most important thing then is to keep a strong center. So that's not the time to which one do you like, that sort of mind. It's how strong is your center. So if your center isn't strong, it really doesn't matter how clear your mind is. You can see, it's clear as day. But if your center isn't strong, if you don't believe in yourself, it won't do you much good. So of course you're bringing to mind the assault on the Capitol, the insurrection, the coup attempt, whatever you want to call it. So what were the people there supposed to do? It must have been very difficult, for the police. They weren't expecting anything like this to react, clearly, is to only go straight and perform their function. So we say, clear mind, strong center. This is what is developed by our practice. And right in the middle is the open heart. So if the mind is open, the heart is open, your center is strong, you will hardly ever go wrong. So I really believe in our practice as having that trifecta, you might call it. And if one is developed to the detriment of another, suppose you only have a strong center, then maybe you're completely bullheaded and you have no room for compassion in your heart. You just meh, like that. And yeah, maybe your heart is open and you want to do something that will really help, but your center is not strong. You cannot do it. Or if you're not seeing the situation really clearly, then which way do you go? What do you do? So all of this has to be developed together. So a complete human being. So thank you for your question as well. We have time for one more question. Yes, Eileen?
Not quite sure how to phrase this, but talking about strong centers, and I was just wondering whether there's such a thing as countries having strong centers. Because, the capital thing just happened. Yeah. But even before that, for the last 4 years, we've been seeing the China versus the US type thing. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that both countries are very, in a sense, secure in their particular centers. And yet the two are not together and don't seem to be able to find any way of reconciling their diverse viewpoints. Yeah. So how can we help to that situation?
Yeah, so a country is made up of many, many millions of people who divide along, particularly we call them party lines. And I don't know of any country, I'm trying to think, I'm not a world historian by any means, but I'm familiar, for instance, with the ancient world and to a certain extent, the medieval world. It seems to me that there have been no nation states that have really had, strong center if you want. Mow over everyone else, but not the openness, not the compassion that's necessary, to really be useful to in this world and to take one's place among other nations. So we do have, the United Nations, and that's really quite wonderful that there is such an organization. And I really believe what Martin Luther King said. I can't remember if he was quoting anyone or not, that the moral arc of the universe bends slowly, but it bends toward justice. And I think we will eventually get there, probably not in our lifetimes. But if you simply look at the situation in this country as compared to the early 1800s, there is a lot more justice now than there was then. So it's, our job as Buddhists, as Zen practitioners ourselves, to lead the sort of lives that we would like all citizens to lead. Trouble in the monastery begins with you, is the old saying. So trouble in your country begins with you too, I suppose. So I hope we all keep a mind that is wide open. Clear like space refers not only to clarity, but to a vast openness, rather than constricting, shutting down, and only for me. Just the opposite of that. So wider, wider, wider. And I actually see that. I see that, well, to be very local, really, in the quantum school of Zen as something that really is developing these characteristics in the practitioners. So let's all have hope, good hope. There's reason for good hope. So thank you all for your questions. In about 10 minutes or so, we'll get back to interviews. So thank you very much.